She was wiping down the glass partition when the laughter started. Jessica kept her eyes on the surface in front of her, slow, circular strokes, the kind of methodical work that becomes invisible the moment you begin it. The boardroom of Next-Gen AI's Seoul headquarters was 52 floors above the city, all white walls and obsidian tables and light so clean it felt engineered. She had cleaned this room 11 times in 6 weeks. She knew every corner of it. She knew, without looking, exactly where Min Jae-kwon was standing. "Look at her," he said. Not quietly. He never said anything quietly. "Just look." She didn't turn around. She moved the cloth to the next panel. Min Jae was 29 years old and already deputy head of corporate strategy, and he wore both of those facts the way some men wear watches, expensively, and so that others would notice. He was standing near the window with his coffee, his back half turned to her, performing for the 3 associates arranged around him like an audience that had not been given the option to leave. "You know what I think every time I see her in here," he continued, dropping his voice just enough to make it feel like a secret while keeping it loud enough to be heard across the room. "I think, who approved this? Who looked at the cleaning contract and thought, yes, this is the standard we want in a 50 billion won company?" One of the associates laughed, short, nervous, uncertain whether it was the right response. Min Jae wasn't done. No education. No background. No idea what she's even standing next to. He gestured at the presentation wall behind her, the one displaying NextGen's quarterly growth projections. "She's literally cleaning next to figures that would change her life and she doesn't even know what they mean." More laughter this time. Looser. More willing. Jessica moved her cloth to the next panel. Her face was still. Her breathing was even. She had heard worse. She had heard it in this building and in buildings before this one, in 3 countries and 2 continents, and she had learned, long ago, in a way that had hardened into something quiet and permanent, that the most powerful response to contempt was patience. She was almost done here anyway. "People like her," Min Jae said, raising his coffee cup in a small, performative shrug, "shouldn't even be in this building." The room went a shade quieter. One young woman near the door, Park Soo-yeon, a junior analyst, looked sharply at the floor. A department head cleared his throat and found something urgent to read on his phone. Min Jae smiled at his associates. No reaction. "See? It's like talking to furniture." Jessica set down her cloth. She turned. And she walked, not fast, not slow, just walked, with the unhurried certainty of someone who has already decided, directly toward him. The associates stepped back without meaning to, some instinct moving their feet before their minds caught up. Min Jae stayed exactly where he was, his smile thinning at the edges, his head tilting slightly, the way it did when he was deciding whether something was a joke. She stopped less than a foot from him. She looked up at him. Clear. Steady. Like she had all the time in the world. And then she leaned in, close enough that no one else in the room could hear a single word, and she said, in a voice as calm and level as a banker reading a final figure. "That offshore account in Busan. Should I bring it up right now, or would you prefer to wait until the chairman walks through that door?" The smile didn't fade slowly. It fell. All at once, like something had been cut from underneath it. Min Jae's face drained. His coffee cup froze halfway to his lips. His mouth opened. Closed. Opened again. Nothing came out. Jessica straightened up. She smoothed the front of her uniform. She picked up her cloth, turned, and walked back to her cart as if she had simply finished a task. The room stared. Min Jae's hand was shaking. Just slightly. Just enough for the people closest to him to see. Nobody had heard what she said. But everyone in that boardroom understood, with the kind of certainty that arrives before thought, that something had just ended for him. And that the woman pushing the cleaning cart toward the door had been the one to end it. They had no idea who she really was. But they were about to find out. Next-Gen AI was not the kind of company that took second place in anything. Founded 8 years ago by Chairman Park Dae-won, it had risen from a 3-person startup in Mapogu to one of Korea's most respected artificial intelligence firms, with clients across 12 countries and a valuation that had made the front page of every major financial publication on the continent. The offices were immaculate. The people were sharp. And the culture, like most of Seoul's elite corporate environments, ran on performance, hierarchy, and a very precise understanding of who mattered and who did not. Jessica Amara Osei had arrived 6 weeks earlier. She was placed by a contracted cleaning company, or so the HR records showed. She came in at 7 in the evening, when most of the senior staff were still at their desks, and she stayed until past midnight, moving through the floors with her cart, her earbuds in, her expression neutral. The staff had catalogued her almost immediately the way people catalog things they don't consider worth cataloging: a glance, a category, a dismissal. The new cleaning lady, someone had called her in the break room on her 3rd day, not bothering to lower their voice. She had smiled faintly and continued wiping down the counter. Min Jae-kwon was 29 years old and already a deputy head of corporate strategy. His family had attended the right schools, given donations to the right foundations, and cultivated the right friendships with the right people. He had never once been told that he wasn't exceptional. He moved through NextGen's offices like someone who had been assured, repeatedly, that the building existed for his benefit. He had noticed Jessica on her 2nd day. Not with any particular attention, more the way someone notices a piece of furniture that has been moved. Out of place. Inconvenient. He had muttered something dismissive under his breath that had made the 2 junior associates with him laugh, and then he had moved on with his day and forgotten about her entirely. Jessica had not forgotten about him. The days settled into a rhythm. Jessica came. Jessica cleaned. Jessica smiled politely when spoken to, which was rarely, and usually in the form of a request rather than a greeting. The staff of NextGen's 48th and 49th floors had mastered the particular Seoul corporate art of speaking around a person as though that person were a load-bearing wall, present, structural, but not conversational. They lowered their voices when they wanted privacy, or simply stopped talking when Jessica entered the room. But with time, they stopped bothering. They spoke openly in meetings she cleaned around. They made calls in hallways 3 feet from her cart. They left conversations unguarded the way people leave doors open when they believe no one else is home. It was efficient. It was careless. And with Jessica, they assumed it was completely safe. It was not. She understood everything. Every clipped exchange between the finance director and his subordinate about the quarterly numbers that didn't add up. Every whispered argument between 2 project managers about a contract that had been awarded without the proper process. Every joke. Every complaint. Every lie dressed up as strategy. She listened. She remembered. She wrote nothing down where anyone could see it. But the thing she listened to most carefully was Min Jae. He was loud, even in his private moments, the kind of loud that comes not from insecurity but from a deep, inherited certainty that no one would dare challenge him. He took calls on speakerphone in shared spaces. He left documents open on screens. He spoke about sensitive matters in hallways because it had never once occurred to him that the woman with the mop could possibly understand a word he was saying. "Hey, how did the Busan transfer go this month?" he'd said one evening on the phone, not 3 feet from where Jessica was replacing a trash liner. The voice on the other end was low. Careful. But Min Jae's responses were not. "Yeah, just drop it into the same account. The chairman has no idea." Jessica had continued tying the trash bag. She had not looked up. Week 3. The coffee incident. Min Jae had been in a meeting that ran 40 minutes over schedule. He emerged irritated, caffeine-deprived, and determined to demonstrate his irritation to someone who couldn't fight back. He poured a cup from the break room dispenser, turned, and managed to place it directly on the edge of Jessica's cart, which he had walked into without looking. The cup tipped. Coffee spread across the floor in a slow, deliberate arc. He looked at the spill. He looked at Jessica. He did not apologize. "Clean this up," he said flatly. "Of course," she said. Her English was clear and quiet. He blinked. Something about her voice irritated him, it was too composed, too unbothered. He had expected some scrambling, some apology from her, some performance of inconvenience that would have allowed him to feel like the gracious party for not making it worse. She gave him none of that he watched her clean it up. Then he said, turning to no one in particular, "She doesn't even know what she did wrong. That's the problem with people like her, no situational awareness." Soo-yeon, who was refilling her water bottle at the sink, turned away. Her hands were shaking slightly. She stared at the wall. Jessica did not look up. But something shifted in her eyes, not anger, not hurt. Something quieter. Something that looked, if you were paying attention, like patience. She was almost done. The investor meeting was announced on a Wednesday. Friday afternoon. The biggest presentation NextGen had run in 3 years, 14 international partners flying in, the chairman's personal involvement, the board in attendance. Min Jae had been assigned to lead the opening segment. He had been talking about it all week, loudly, in every room he entered. "This is my moment," he told his associates over lunch. "After this, director position is guaranteed. The chairman sees me. Everyone sees me." Friday came. The 49th floor boardroom was transformed, fresh flower arrangements, name placards, a buffet of catered food arranged with surgical precision. Staff moved in and out, adjusting, straightening, rehearsing. The investors hadn't arrived yet. The chairman was delayed by 20 minutes. The room was full of NextGen's senior staff, associates, and department heads, everyone present, everyone watching, everyone performing their best version of prepared. Jessica entered with her cart at 3:47 p.m. She was there to clear the earlier meeting's remnants, a few cups, some loose papers near the recycle bin, a smudge on the glass partition near the window. She worked quietly, as she always did, staying close to the walls, occupying the minimum necessary space. Min Jae saw her immediately. He was standing near the main presentation screen, surrounded by department heads, his confidence calibrated to the room. He had slept 4 hours the previous night preparing. He had rehearsed his segment 11 times. And now, with every senior leader in the company watching, something dark and "Hey," he said loudly. The room paused. "Why is she still here? The meeting starts in 15 minutes. Jessica looked up. "You know you shouldn't leave them in a place like this." Min Jae continued, his voice filling the room. "No education, no qualifications, what exactly is she contributing here? Someone tell the contract company to improve their timing." A few people chuckled. Most did not. The room had gone the particular kind of quiet that happens when something has gone wrong but no one is sure yet whose job it is to say so. He wasn't finished. He turned to the room, performing now, needing the audience. "Honestly. We spend billions on AI and we can't figure out how to schedule the cleaning staff. This is why standards matter. You bring in people without the baseline, education, background, capability, and you get this." He gestured at her. At her cart. At everything she represented to him. The room was silent. Jessica put down the cloth she was holding. She turned to face him fully. She stood up straight. And she walked toward him, the same walk as before, measured and unhurried, until she stood directly in front of him, close enough that the room leaned in without realizing it. She looked at him the way a person looks at someone they have been watching for a very long time. And then she leaned in, her voice barely above a breath, quiet enough that only he could hear every single word. "That offshore account in Busan. Should I bring it up right now, or would you prefer to wait until the chairman walks in?" The color left his face in a single second. His mouth opened. Nothing came out. His hands, at his sides, began to shake. The room couldn't hear what she had said. But they understood his face. They understood that something had just ended for him, and that the woman standing in front of him, the woman he had been performing his contempt for in front of every senior leader in the company, had been the one to end it. Jessica stepped back, smoothed her uniform, and returned to her cart. Min-jae tried to recover. He gave a short laugh, the forced kind, the kind that sounds like a question pretending to be an answer. "She's confused," he said. "She doesn't, she's just." No one responded. The whispers started at the edges of the room. Soo-yeon had moved close to a colleague and was saying something low. The finance director had gone very still. Two of the department heads were exchanging a look that said they weren't sure what had just happened, but they wanted to be very far away from Min-jae when it became clear. He excused himself. "A bathroom," he said, and almost made it to the door before his phone buzzed. He looked at it. His face, already pale, went gray. The chairman had arrived early. Chairman Park Dae-won walked into the boardroom at 4:03 p.m., 17 minutes before schedule, calm, unhurried, flanked by two members of his executive team. The room straightened. Conversation stopped. The performance of professionalism intensified immediately. He scanned the room. His eyes found Jessica's cart near the window. And then they found Jessica. "Amara," he said. "Not Jessica. Not the cleaning lady. Just her name," said with the warmth and respect of someone addressing a colleague. "An equal." The room went absolutely still. She inclined her head. "Chairman." He crossed the room toward her and shook her hand with both of his. "Your report, I read through everything last night. Thorough work. Exceptional, actually." The silence in the room was the kind that rings. Min-jae had stopped walking. He stood in the middle of the boardroom floor like someone who had stepped onto ice and was now unsure of every direction. Chairman Park turned to the assembled room. His expression was pleasant, unhurried, the look of a man who had known exactly what was happening in his company for longer than anyone realized. "I'd like to introduce Dr. Amara Osei," he said. "She's been embedded here for the past 6 weeks as a forensic financial investigator. She was hired by the board to identify anomalies in our internal financial systems." He paused. "She has found several." Silence. Dr. Osei holds a doctorate in financial forensics from the London School of Economics. She has conducted investigations across 9 countries. And she has spent the last 6 weeks in this building, listening, while every single one of you spoke freely around her, because it never once occurred to you that she might be paying attention. Soo-yeon closed her eyes. The flashes came then, not as projections, but as understanding. The way Amara had glanced at a document left open on a desk, once, for exactly 3 seconds. The way she had been on certain floors at certain times, always the same floors, always when Min-jae was present. The way she had never actually been startled by anything said near her. The way she had smiled, not blankly, not reflexively, but with the quiet patience of someone watching a clock. She hadn't been invisible. She had been watching. The evidence was clean and comprehensive. Amara had documented irregular fund transfers, a pattern of redirections totaling just under 400 million won over 18 months, routed through a shell account registered in Busan. The transactions were structured carefully, just below the thresholds that would trigger automatic review. Someone with detailed knowledge of NextGen's internal compliance system had set them up. That someone was Min-jae. He was presented with the documentation in the boardroom, his boardroom, the one he had just stood in and performed his contempt and called her furniture. He sat down. He stared at the papers. He didn't speak for a long time. Security personnel arrived shortly after. Not dramatically, no shouting, no physical struggle. Just 2 men in dark uniforms who appeared at the door and waited, and Min-jae who stood up slowly and walked toward them because there was nothing else to do. He passed the department heads who had laughed at his jokes. He passed Soo-yeon, who looked at the floor. He passed the finance director, who had gone very pale. He did not look at Amara. He was escorted out. The room breathed again, unevenly, carefully, like people recovering from something. Amara collected her things with the same unhurried efficiency she had brought to every other task in the building. Her cart. Her uniform. Her badge. She had a flight in 4 hours and a debrief with the board in the morning. She was already thinking about the next case, a pharmaceutical company in Incheon, a referral from a bank she'd worked with in Singapore. Soo-yeon caught her in the hallway. Amara. She stopped. Her voice was careful, self-conscious. I'm sorry. I should have said something. Any of the times, I should have said something. Amara looked at her for a moment. Not unkindly. You felt uncomfortable, she said. That matters. What you do with that feeling next time, that's what matters more. Soo-yeon nodded, her eyes wet. Amara pulled on her jacket. She picked up her bag, her real bag, not the cleaning cart, and walked toward the elevator. Several people stepped aside as she passed, instinctively, with a deference that had not existed 6 weeks ago. She noticed it the way she noticed everything, clearly, without particular feeling about it. At the elevator, she paused. Turned, once, to look back at the boardroom floor, the coffee station, the glass partitions, the morning light falling across the Seoul skyline. 52 floors of ambition and hierarchy and people who had looked straight at her and seen nothing worth looking at. She thought about Min Jae. She thought about the cleaning carts and the careless conversations and the way her presence had been converted, automatically, into absence. Then she pressed the elevator button. The doors opened. She stepped in, and as the doors began to close, she said quietly, to no one, to everyone, to the building itself, the words she had said to Soo-yeon, one more time, like a closing argument. Respect isn't given to titles. It's shown in how you treat people you think don't matter. The doors closed. The elevator descended. And in the boardroom above, 52 floors above Seoul, the room was very quiet, full of people who were just beginning to understand what they had missed, and what that missing had cost them.